comes as the Trump administration imposed these sanctions on the state-owned oil company in Venezuela. A very critical move that has received a lot of responses. Let's get one now. We're joined live by Lucas Koerner, political analyst and editor of the website Venezuelanalysis.com. Thank you so much for your time. First, just describe the mood to us in the moment in Caracas.
Despite the escalating, intense political standoff that we're living through right now, the mood on the street is actually quite normal and calm. The violent disturbances that occurred over last week, Monday through Thursday, have much ceased. The banging of pots and pans, the cacerolazos cannot even be heard tonight. Nonetheless, and businesses remain open, people going about their day. Nonetheless, the mood is definitely one of great tension. There's a lot of fear that this escalating political standoff could have a violent solution in terms of a U.S. military intervention, though that remains to be seen.
We know that it is Monday there where you are at the moment, Tuesday afternoon here, Wednesday your time. The opposition leaders called for another big protest, also on Saturday as well. Is there a belief, from what you've seen, these crowds, do they continue to increase in size, or are people getting used to the situation?
Well, you really only saw demonstrations last Wednesday, January 23rd, which were significant in the opposition-controlled east of the city. But there was also a fairly large pro-government rally in the west of the city as well. After that, there really have not been significant protests. And as I said, life has gone on quite normally as if nothing really had happened. And Nicolas Maduro continues to be president of the country.
And what are both leaders doing at the moment? I know a couple of hours ago we heard from Maduro, as you mentioned, looking very presidential there, very much held up in his compound. What's he been saying, particularly in response to these sanctions from the United States?
Well, President Maduro, he has vowed to fight in courts this move to effectively impose a de facto oil embargo on Venezuela's oil industry by effectively preventing the government from receiving payments for oil exports. He's vowing to fight that. At the same time, he has been preparing military exercises, which are to take place in the first week of February, really delivering a message to the United States that he and his government will not allow the United States to intervene militarily in the country. Juan Guaidó, on the other hand, the person who was claimed to be the interim president of Venezuela, who swore himself in last week as interim president of Venezuela, this National Assembly came out with a declaration that issued simultaneously with the United States their sanctions, the new sanctions, which proposes to transfer these assets to their control. Clearly, it was a simultaneous move.
Some countries in your region are, of course, supporting Maduro continuing, but many other nations, the EU, you have Australia now joining the United States in this, talking about the opposition leader and supporting the opposition leader here. Is there really no other option than fresh elections now? Because Maduro just surely cannot continue without having to deal with some parts of the United States or the EU long term.
Well, actually, it's very interesting because Mexico and Uruguay have vowed to have launched a proposal to mediate this current dispute. And in fact, it just came out that Tabaré Vázquez, Uruguayan president, is set to propose Montevideo as a site for a dialogue summit. And Federica Mogherini, the EU foreign policy chief, has indicated that the EU might be willing to participate in that summit, given what has been reported that there but not confirmed yet, that there is not a majority in the EU to recognize Juan Guaidó as president, although countries like Spain, the United Kingdom, and France have said that they would do so, or at least France and Spain. Of course, these countries do have their own internal political crises to deal with at this moment.
Yes, of course. Well, that's a very good point, of course, what's happening in Europe at the moment. But the United States approach here, what's your view on it? Because on the one hand, they are definitely leading and certainly keeping the door open to military action if they deem necessary, and no doubt it wouldn't just be the United States there, but trying to figure out why the United States is getting involved. Is it similar to the idea of Vietnam, that it's about protecting democracy, given that Maduro is now widely being touted as a dictator?
I don't think it personally has anything to do with democracy. I mean, given that Nicolas Maduro himself was elected with 6.2 million votes on 20th of May, or on 31% participation in the 31% of the total electorate, 46% participation, which is more or less average in much of the Western world. Moreover, the United States had, threatened to sanction the opposition candidate in that election. So, and of course, the United States has alliances, very close relationships with brutal dictatorial regimes in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, and even in Honduras here. So I think that it's, at the same time, in the United States will not tolerate in Venezuela that it has. Since the 2002 coup that attempted to overthrow Chavez, it was ultimately defeated. The United States has continually sought to oust the Chavista government, not over questions of democracy and human rights, but because it will not tolerate a challenge to its hegemony in what it considers its backyard. And Venezuela sits on the largest oil reserves on the planet.
Well, I have to jump in there. It's more than that. It is more than that. And I know that there have been a lot of commentators that have said that. And the point that we read is Amnesty International, they're not talking about oil. They're talking about human rights. They're saying that 75% of people in Venezuela, they're actually underweight at the moment. They're talking about the huge number of people who've been locked up. I do understand that there is oil. We hear these complaints all the time, but surely the United States has also been a leader in trying to push, human rights around the world as well. It can't just be about oil.
Well, Amnesty International, interestingly enough, has yet to denounce the illegal U.S.-led sanctions on the country, which, according to estimates, have cost Venezuela around $6 billion in oil revenues following their imposition in August of 2017, leading to around a loss of about 1 million barrels a day in production. And this new oil embargo is going to have devastating consequences. And even the Congressional Research Service, which is an arm of the U.S. Congress, has said so, warning that new harsher sanctions will exacerbate the humanitarian situation in Venezuela, quote unquote.
And so there are a lot of people, though, who say that they've come out and they've said, I'm reading here, they've been tortured or otherwise abused while in custody. They were unable to see their families or lawyers for hours, occasionally days after they were arrested, and that was political, nothing to do with the financial situation. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, saying that unemployment's now hit about 34%. Obviously, that does lead to a lot of frustration there, and I can see that you're trying to link that to those outside sanctions. But this has been going for quite a long time, since Chavez, surely.
Oh, without a doubt. There is massive discontent with the government, principally with the economic situation. An opposition-aligned data analysis pollster found in October that 86% of Venezuelans find that their number one priority is the economic situation or the social situation, i.e. access to medicine, social services, and crime. Only 12% cited political concerns as their number one issue. So Venezuelans absolutely are discontented with the government, but at the same time, they find the opposition extremely they resent the opposition as well. This same poll found that the National Assembly, of which Guaido is president, has a 70% disapproval rating. So many Venezuelans don't see solutions coming from this opposition, which has proved time and time again that it is subordinate to Washington, or from the United States. There's going to need to be dialogue. There's going to need to be some kind of negotiation within the existing institutional framework, as Uruguay and Mexico are proposing, and not the kind of violent regime change scenario which the United States has imposed on numerous countries like Libya and Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, with terrifying consequences.
All right, Lucas Koerner, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, Zimbabwe President